In any case, the Declaration Towards a Global Ethic was one of the most important documents coming out of the 1993 Parliament. SGI has been very actively involved with the Parliament, I'm glad to say. And just as recently as last year in Monterrey, Mexico, and in fact around I think in the last 3 or 4 years, a beautiful exhibit of Gandhi and King has been going around the world. Has that been shown, Danny, here, this, the Gandhi King? I'm sure it has, yeah. I was privileged in Monterrey to introduce the exhibit as someone who was also I studied at King's University, Boston University, and then had connections with Morehouse College and Dean Carter, who in fact was one of the leading lights behind this exhibit. And that's to say that SGI has also played an important part in the Parliament of Religions. The next Parliament, which I'm going to talk about at the very end of this talk, is in Melbourne, Australia. Melbourne was chosen because of, largely because of indigenous peoples. As you know, in the Australian Parliament, Kevin Rudd, the Australian Prime Minister, made a historic apology for the treatment of indigenous peoples. Those of you who come from Japanese backgrounds and are familiar with American history know the disgraceful treatment that was meted out to the Japanese during the Second World War. And so you can have some imaginative sense of what indigenous peoples around the world have been going through. But in any case, that's only one of the factors. There's much more going on about the Parliament that I will talk about. But I thought I'd mention that because one of the things that I'm going to talk about today with reference to Gandhi is the importance of interfaith and interreligious dialogue. Okay, so those are my sort of preparatory remarks, and I want to introduce the Gandhi portion of my talk by, if you want, taking a peek at our global situation today, because I contend that Gandhi's message is timely. There's a counter view to this one, which is to say that Gandhi's techniques of nonviolent resistance might have worked against the British, because the British were, in this view, an essentially civilized people given to traditions of law and dialogue, to which the Indian Defense Minister, I think, had the appropriate response. He said, the sun never sets on the British Empire because God doesn't trust the British in the dark. So the idea that somehow British imperialism was a very kindly and a very humane form of domination, I think, is historically inaccurate. Gandhi had to fight inordinately both against the British at every step of the way after he came back from South Africa, but also to fight against his fellow Indians who were very keen on taking up violent forms of resistance. And so this double struggle against his, on the one hand, his Indian colleagues, and on the other hand, the British, I think, testifies, and I think I'll try to say more about that, that the principles are by no means local or confined to one particular instance. But nonetheless, I think we have to recognize that we live in dark times, however one wants to characterize that, whether with the latest financial crisis or the fact that wars are going on around the world, not only the war against Iraq, but the genocide in Darfur, the instability in the Middle East, the trouble between India and Pakistan over Kashmir, and so on and so on. And so I think it's important when we talk about religion, and some of these wars, unfortunately, have had sort of religious causes. I think it's overstating the case to say that religion has been the sort of prime motivator. There have certainly been other factors, political and economic, but there's no question, if we are honest with ourselves, that religion has contributed a great deal to these religious wars, and especially the perversions of religion that have given rise to religious-based terrorism. So I think we have to be honest and critical about our own religious traditions and practices. And if anything, I think these times call for the conversion of religions themselves, not the conversions that religion bring about, but the kind of inner purification that, again, is so much stressed in Buddhist theory and practice. So I just want to say two things about the global situation. On the one hand, there is this ongoing war, so-called war against terrorism, which has indeed spawned a number of attitudes that are not conducive to peace. And on the other hand, there are the Gandhis, the Martin Luther Kings, the Desmond Tutus, the Václav Havels of the world, who are sort of trying to fight to bring about a more peaceful world. These are two forces at war with each other, at war in a kind of spiritual sense, in conflict, if you want, with each other. And I think when we talk about religion, we have to recognize that this duality of which has been recognized by thinkers as diverse as Freud and by sort of Thomas Hobbes, if you want, that we are, on the one hand, in Freud's words, human nature is sort of prone to a kind of self-destructive, dark side, balanced, of course, in Freud's language, by the force of eros, the force of love, the force of constructive desire. That is also a thread, if you want, that runs through the tension at the founding of the American nation, where John Locke, on the one hand, represented the side of human nature that is peaceful and good, whereas other thinkers invoked Thomas Hobbes and said that the sort of primordial condition of human beings was destructive and warlike. That's a debate that is going on. I think you'll see that Gandhi is someone who unequivocally comes out on the side of seeing human beings and seeing our peace-loving side as primordial and our warring sides as an aberration rather than the other way around. When we talk about a culture of peace, I think we've sort of got to recognize that the word culture, as you know, is a biological, agricultural metaphor to grow. That's what from the medieval French, the word culture means, from which, of course, we get the word agriculture. And so when we come to peace education, we need to go quite deep in terms of giving ourselves and those we teach and learn from some deep principles which have wide resonance and can effectively neutralize the forces of darkness and the forces of destruction. One of the things that I will emphasize in Gandhi's talk is the fearlessness of Gandhi, where imbued with his sense of truth